Alright, Triad RackAmp 300 installation time. I did the unboxing video on these, got them already opened and ready to go. Two of them going in the rack right here where the RackAmp 350s used to be. Let's have some fun and put in some gear. So I am going to go ahead and put it in using the rack ears. These are the little L brackets that hold it. Again, these aren't very heavy. They don't need slides or trays or any of that sort of stuff. So we're taking the screws out of the side, and these are a little shorter. It comes with longer screws to be able to go through the bracket into the side right there, that triple screw setup. Magnetic tip screwdriver, big part of the toolkit. So you can see how that fits. Again, just a little L bracket on the side there. Let's get the other side. Alright, we've got 2 amps with the ears attached to both sides. So I'll stop a minute and talk a little bit about something that I think serves me well, or that I like, put it that way, when it comes to the way that I do things and my equipment, and that I'm kind of OCD. So for example here, we've got 2 amplifiers, identical. They're going to drive 2 different subwoofers in the living room. Well, how do you tell them apart? Looking at my screen upstairs, I've got the left sub and I've got the right sub. So I like to differentiate them by left up, right down. So the one that serves the left, the thing on the left is going to go on the top. The one that serves the thing on the right is going to go on the bottom. Can also add a little extra layer of OCD because these have serial numbers. This one ends in 0186. That one ends in 0187. So I'm going to do it sequentially. I'm going to put 86 as sub number 1, or amp number 1, on top above the one with the higher serial number, the one on the left. So the boxes are labeled. Everything is just kept more organized. I really encourage, when you're setting stuff up, right, apply a little OCD, and it can save you some headache, save you some hassle later on. You know, put the screws that I took off of this thing back in, don't throw the bag away, put the screws in the bag, the shorter screws in the bag that the longer screws came in, and put the stuff back in the box. Keep it all together, keep all that packaging, keep those boxes as long as you have the space to store it in, of course. Like a good portion of the storage room that I'm in right now is speaker boxes and that sort of thing, and equipment boxes and whatnot. But eventually, you know, new things are going to come out, you're going to upgrade, and nothing helps your resale better than keeping your stuff clean, keeping it together. If you can put something up on eBay, you can put something up on Facebook Marketplace, and it's a loose piece of gear with all these pieces, and the person doesn't know whether everything that's supposed to be there is going to be there, you're going to make less money than if you show the picture of that thing wrapped up in the original plastic bags, and everything's there, and everything's neat, and everything's tidy. You will save yourself or gain yourself back a lot of money upgrading equipment over the years just to do stuff that way. But it takes a little extra effort. It takes a little OCD. But again, I think it's in everybody's interest, and it serves well to do things that way. Go talk a minute too here about some rack management. Now I've been doing more of the videos actually in this room by the rack, and I think they play a little bit better. There's some better lighting and stuff in there, and it's fun talking about home theater next to a big stack of home theater equipment. But I keep this thing real organized. Big surprise, right? The equipment on the upper left here, the upper left of the rack, is the processing and the source devices that go to my living room. I've got another section down here. This is my Control 4 stuff, my HC800 processor, my Control 4 audio zones, and then all the way at the bottom I've got kind of the miscellaneous stuff. I've got a drawer for keeping odds and ends and my screwdrivers and some cabling and remote controls and that sort of thing. So they're all right here at the rack, easy to grab, easy to access. And at the very bottom is my UPS, my my uninterruptible power supply that drives line conditioning and power protection to the entire rack. That thing is humongous and it's very heavy. So rack mounting that anywhere else actually would have been kind of tough or probably stressful on the rack. So instead I put it on the very bottom, on the very floor. Again, nice and organized. And also down there with the miscellaneous stuff, right, is my cable modem and so on. All right, the right side is the home theater gear. That's the main thrust of all of this equipment and so on. So I try to keep everything together. I guess you could say a little miscellaneous stuff at the top. This is my Synology NAS here that I use for file storage and a little bit of media and that sort of thing. I've got the source devices for my theater. I've got my processing and amplification down below with a lot of room to add things, change things, and so on. And I'm hoping to make some alterations and some augmentations which will put a little more equipment into this rack coming up that's in here right now. But I've got the space for it. I've got the organization for it. And again, at the top there, that's where I keep all my gaming stuff. The PCs up there, the consoles, and so on. And they're there because wireless controller access, right? I don't want them inside the Faraday cage. That's this metal rack. I get better controller access, better controller reception to the living room and even to the theater on the other side of the wall if that stuff is up and out in the open and letting its wireless bubble for the controllers have some room to breathe. I've got shelves. That's where the prior rack amps were sitting. Again, we're going to go ahead and use the rack ears. I think I probably should be rack mounting more of my stuff than I do versus setting it on the shelves. So I'm going to reconfigure this section a little bit. We'll take these shelves out and move them down. We'll take the blanks and kind of shuffle or squish everything together a little bit more and get it all set up before we start wiring. Again, we got the magnetic tip screwdrivers, magnetic tipped screwdrivers, so that nothing goes flying around the room, falling underneath something when I pull things out. The other thing I make a lot of use of, Velcro strips. You can buy this stuff in these bigger rolls, thick, and then just use some scissors and cut it down. I tie everything up with Velcro. Sometimes it's a pain, but it really does work very well. Keeps your stuff neat, keeps your stuff organized. I commented before in the unboxing video, I probably will end up moving this stuff around again at some point. This Denon receiver is not long to stay here. I'm moving towards a Zone 2 setup where both the living room and the theater room are driven off of a single processor with a main zone and a Zone 2 option. So I don't need this processing, and instead I'm going to replace this Denon with just a straight up amplifier that the RCA line level Zone 2 audio output, 2-channel audio output can come out of, and then feed that amplifier for the mains, and then these Triad RackAmp 300s for the subwoofers. This is where it starts to get challenging and you need 4 sets of hands or an extra pair of hands. I should have the little guy down here helping actually, but he's upstairs making crafts for a school fair they got coming up. If I wanted to be really smart, I'd probably have a little hand-driven electric screwdriver with the magnetic tips to zip this stuff in and zip this stuff out. If the family's watching, Christmas is coming. Now I can figure out whether my wife really watches these videos or not. Alright, so one in. Hopefully nobody bumps these dials walking in and out of here to get stuff. I like that they're not really thick. They're pretty recessed, so it should be pretty safe. And the kids are old enough to know that you don't come in and start jacking around on stuff on the rack. One other thing to keep in mind when you have like a rack like this, right, is keeping it clean. It's a little tough. The more you integrate stuff, the more shielding you put in place, the harder it is to access things. The harder it is to clean it out, vacuum it out, dust it out, and whatnot. A lot of these shelves and stuff, they get real dusty, but such is life. At least I have a nice room here where the majority of the time this door is kept closed, and there's enough air circulation. We're in the basement, so it's a nice cool room year round. A good room to have this kind of stuff in, and it's big and it's open. It's not just a tight space for the rack only, so that all helps. But I do like these shelves though, as much as it is nice to integrate stuff with face shields and keep it all clean. Shelves are good, and these have nice ventilation on the sides, nice and sturdy, pretty deep. So I've been happy with this rack. I got this rack from Dan DiCarlo at AudioVision when we built the original house and put everything in 8 years ago. Pulled all the wiring down to this space, did the assembly and the suggestion for this rack. A good rack really makes tinkering with your home theater stuff and playing around with your stuff, moving it around a lot more enjoyable. Here's another pro tip. When you're working in your rack, it's really important to always make sure to try to push up. Keep everything as tight to one another as you can get. Because as you start building down, or I suppose you could go the other way and push down and build up, but in any case, when you're putting stuff in a rack, eventually you're going to hit points where you got to take things out and put things back in the middle. And I've certainly had it happen before where I didn't keep it nice and tight. And these tolerances, these blanks, the shelves, the equipment, other rack ears and stuff that you might put on your gear, they're not always 100%. Even though the 1U, 2U, 3U, it's like a universal-ish standard for racks. But if you don't keep your stuff tight, if you don't keep it packed, eventually I need to put this last blank in right here, one little single. And if I didn't keep my spacing well, that wouldn't fit. Thankfully I did. It even has a little bit of up and down play. But again, really important. Plan for the things that you're going to do later when you start at the top or the bottom so that everything fits the way it's supposed to. Nothing's worse than if this thing hadn't fit. It would have been unscrewing all the way from the top or all the way from the bottom, trying to squeeze things back together in order to create the gap necessary to fit that in. Alright, so we are nice and assembled. Denon receiver, blank, Triad RackAmp 1, blank, Triad RackAmp 2, couple of blanks, and you can see how I keep the rack kind of organized left to right. I don't know, I like things clean, I like things systematic. So we've got kind of a shelf on the Kaleidescape, shelf over there next to a blank, shelf next to some blanks, and on down until everything connects up all the way clear to the bottom. So if we did a quick config on these Triad rack amps, I'm going to set both of these crossovers fully to the LFE, because at least while I have, let's get some focus there, at least while I have the Denon receiver, all the bass management's going to be done in the receiver. Later on, I actually will use the crossover, the low pass crossover that's built into these. We can keep the phases fixed to 0. For now, I am going to keep them auto on versus manual turn on or using the 12 volt. Because these have the Phoenix triggers, not a 3.5mm trigger, I'll probably have to do some wiring, finagling, cut into some cables. Eventually, though, I probably would prefer to use the 12 volt trigger rather than the auto on. We'll see how the auto sense works, but nothing seeds doubt and FUD in my mind more than turning my stuff on way up in the living room and watching a show, watching something, playing a video game up there, and wondering, did the amps come on? Did they not come on? Am I hearing bass? Am I not hearing bass? Sometimes it's obvious, right? But sometimes maybe it's not, depending on the content or what you're doing. So, and then of course I have bronze, Triad Bronze subs. So we want this dial in the bronze position. So now all that's left is to wire up the backs. I'll do that now. Real quick, here's another awesome piece of gear. I keep it in my rack. I use it all the time. The headlamp. Because when I get back there, I'm 45 years old. I can hardly see, especially stuff that close to my face. It's all blurry. You got black on gray text. I can't read any of that stuff. So this thing really helps a ton. $11 on Amazon, Energizer brand, I think. Invaluable for a home theater setup and rack tinkering. All right, this is probably going to be hard to see, but just to give an idea, we are fully connected here. Try and get the light in the right spot. We have the speaker wire coming down from the subs upstairs on the terminals, left and right. Again, left sub, upper, lower serial number, right sub, lower amp, higher serial number. Got some older tributaries cables that I've had for quite a while, connecting the sub outputs of the receiver into the inputs of those amplifiers. Were connected on power cords. Special bought shorter run, higher gauge monoprice power cables, really just to clean up the rack more than anything. So we're good to go. We're ready to turn this thing on and try to test it out. So that's a live install vlog. 2 Triad RackAmp 300s serving bronze subs up in the living room. Hopefully you took a couple things away from that. I tried to make it a little more of a general installation video, some tips and tricks and how I like to do things. Again, keep things clean, keep things neat, keep things organized, and again, some nice tools, some tips and tricks for your own gear installations. There's not really much to do by the way of kind of calibrating or configuring these for how I'm running the living room. But like always, I'll be commenting on how I think they're working and all my gear and different things in general. We'll be replacing that Denon with a fixed amp later on. So thanks for watching. Please leave any questions, comments, suggestions, feedback in the comments. Like and subscribe for more, and I'll be back. Thanks.